Hello everyone. Before we begin with chapter 3, we are going to do chapter 1a, which is Modernity and Social Changes in Europe. So this is so that you understand some of the theoretical underpinnings of our classical thinkers. As we saw in our last lecture, people are usually a product of their time. So we will see some of the dominant ideas of their time and the dominant events which shaped the thinking of our sociologists. So what we will be learning are a few events and ideas that shape through history, relevant to our syllabus and our understanding of thinkers. We will begin with the scientific revolution. So, the scientific revolution began challenging the dominant views of the universe at the time, and the dominant views of the universe were based on religion and other types of reasoning, which we will see. So the first challenge came via the Copernican revolution. Copernicus was a 1542 Polish astronomer. So at the time, people believed that the Earth was the center of the universe. The Sun and all the other planets revolve around the Earth. And this Polish guy, Nicholas Copernicus, he attacked this geocentric model of the universe, right? That the Earth is at the center and it's stationary. And Copernicus proposed that the Sun was at the center of the universe. This is called as the heliocentric model. Helio refers to the Sun, and it led to development of modern physics, as we know. Right? Later on, Kepler, he said that the orbits are not circular but elliptical, and Galileo. So Galileo is known as the inventor of the telescope, but he also contributed to mechanics, study of physical objects. Another belief at that time was this came from the time. This was a theory of Aristotle, 2000 years back, that if you throw two bodies down towards the ground from the same distance, then the heavier body will fall faster than the lighter body, right? Whereas Galileo showed that that was not true. Two bodies, irrespective of the weight, will fall down at the same rate, freely falling bodies. And he showed this mathematics. So he could use mathematics to describe the behavior of actual objects in the world, right? Like if you throw a rock, you can draw an equation for the trajectory of the projectile, right? Projectile motion. So this was pretty new at that time, right? So people were very amazed, right? So another important aspect, his contribution towards the scientific method, was the emphasis on testing hypothesis experimentally, right? That means you come up with the assumption, then you test it, right? Suppose you have a plant and you have an assumption that if you don't give it water, it will still survive, and then you don't give water and it dies. That means your assumption is wrong, right? So this marks the beginning of the empirical approach to studying nature. Empirical means belief in observation, right, rather than assumption, and this continues till today. And then we come to Rene Descartes. He was a French philosopher during the 18th century. So he is famous for the quote that I think, therefore I am, right? So he was a rationalist and believed in logic. And why Rene Descartes is important for our classical theorist is that he developed a new mechanical philosophy. That means the physical world consists of inert particles of matter which interact and collide with each other. Right? This is the basis of Newtonian mechanics. Right? That objects are inert and they interact and collide, and that's how you can. They don't use their mind, right? So their behavior is predictable. The earlier people didn't believe so. So this is the one of the foundations of modern science, and he is the person to bring it. So this was the thought which was just emergent at that time. So we will see how this kind of thinking developed some of the assumptions or hypotheses of our classical thinkers, like in Durkheim and in functionalism as a perspective we'll be seeing. And the scientific revolution really culminates with Newton. So we know what Newton did. He discovered gravity, right? His masterpiece was called as the mathematical principles of natural philosophy. He was the inventor of calculus. And this scientific revolution also percolated in all disciplines, like in biology. Charles Darwin wrote The Origin of Species in 1859, which changed the way we think about the origin of humans, and that there is a thing called evolution, and this also played an effect in influencing our classical thinkers, especially in the perspective of functionalism. So, one more important development during this reason was a new way of reasoning, right? How do we find the truth? That is where reasoning. Until then, the way of reasoning was what is called as deductive, right? So, Aristotle was the proponent of this method 2000 years back from our scientific revolution. So, what is deductive reasoning is that it begins with a premise, general premise, then it goes to a particular premise, and then the conclusion, right? So you see this kind of thing in the paper 2, CSAT, logical reasoning. An example would be the general premise that all men are mortal, a particular premise that Socrates is a man. So the logical conclusion should be that Socrates is mortal, right? But there is a problem with deductive reasoning, that you have to have a general premise which is absolutely true, right? And there's a lot of problem in finding such premises, which people like Galileo and Copernicus have found out, right? And many of a time, God was brought in to justify this general premise. So the origins of the scientific method in a way lie with Francis Bacon, because he developed the inductive method of reasoning. So what the inductive method means is that it begins with observations rather than axiom or a general statement. So this is the beginning of empiricism, belief in what we see. Right, so here we begin with observations. We collect many observations. We then try to find general laws out of the common patterns. That if an observation is repeated, then we try to find a law which it tries to explain this behavior. So where the observations comes the general statement. This is a bottom-up approach, whereas we saw that deduction was a top-down approach. And the thing about inductive method is that it is not, the conclusion is not certain. It is a probability that till we find something which contradicts our conclusion, so then it must be true, right? So it is skepticism. This is the beginning of skepticism too in reasoning. We try to find observations, till if we find something which challenges our general law, then it no longer holds true. We have to change the law we have made. So out of the scientific revolution came the Enlightenment, whose central thesis was that society is best understood through reason rather than tradition. So reason was the way we could alleviate human suffering. So this was the moral vision behind the Enlightenment. So as we saw earlier too in our previous chapter, right? That the various thinkers of the Enlightenment saw human happiness primarily as instrumental efficiency and calculation. So, instrumental efficiency, this means that uh, this is an approach to thinking and action that focuses on using the most efficient means possible to achieve an end. Right? Like, let's say you have to clear the UPSC exam. What you will do is to study most efficiently, right? Which is to go through lectures and notes, revise and repeat, rather than keep on reading new material, right? Try to practice answer writing and forming these habits, right? So one of the Enlightenment thinkers, which we will see, is Immanuel Kant. You will read about him in GS4 ethics paper. In sociology, we will be concerning with some of his ideas and how they influenced our classical thinkers. So Kant uses reason to deduce the categorical imperative. This is his central idea. Categorical imperative is a sort of a golden rule of ethics, right? Which says that act as you would want all other people to act towards you, right? Or towards all other people. So you can judge the morality of all the acts via this rule. Let's say you will want to kill someone, right? So does this mean you also want to get killed by someone, right? Which is no. So that means this act is morally wrong, right? Or suppose someone killed you accidentally. So should he go to prison? So using the categorical imperative, this question becomes that if you killed someone accidentally, then should you spend eternity in prison? For Kant, it's no. Hence, the rightfulness or wrongness of an action, right, depends not on the consequences, but on its intentions, whether they fulfill our duty or not. So, the motives and intentions are the key for Kant. And Kant equates modernity with rationality and freedom because only reason provides us a platform uh, which can regulate our understanding about the world and provide a basis for agreement. So, with the example of Kant, we saw how the Enlightenment thought was, right? But there are some issues with this way of thinking. That first, it assumes that all people possess reason, and rationality is the same for everyone. But that is not true. Rationality itself is a product of our experience. That means it differs in different cultures because everyone has different ways of thinking. They have formed societies on different assumptions, right? So one of the examples you could say is that now it is coming more into picture that the individual nature of our polity is somewhat flawed because that has led to the destruction of the environment, right? Individualism. So everything is somewhat connected, our actions, right? So uh, there may be different rules of rationality and like bounded, this is also called as bounded rationality, right? uh, so hence Kant's philosophy is also ethnocentric, right? European centric, that way of thinking. And Kant does not recognize that people are social and historical creatures. Their reasoning is based on their social and historical context in where they belong, right? Like in America, blacks were given civil rights in 1860s. The end of segregation. Sorry, 1960s, the end of segregation, right? So it's a and laws like the Jim Crow law, which legalized racism, were prevalent during that time. So rationality itself is a product of the context, the historical and social context. So the next idea we come across is something very familiar. It is republicanism. Like India is in the preamble, it says that India is a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Right? So what does this mean? So republicanism is an ideology. Ideology means system of ideas, belief, of governing a society or a state as a republic. And that means the power resides with the people, where the head of the state is a representative of the people who hold popular sovereignty. Right? That means the authority, right? Rather than the people being subjects of the head of the state. So India is a republic, and during that time, this was a new way of thinking because earlier people were subjects of the head of the state who was a monarch, a king, right? And the authority was with the king just because he was born as a king, right? The republicanism changed the whole concept. Now the power went to the people, right? So this people can mean the majority, right? Or uh, yeah, it basically means the majority of the people, right? But there are a few change intricacies which we'll see. So now that we have seen the definition of republicanism, let's see what is the difference between republicanism and democracy. Are they the same or are they different? Well, as you see in our preamble, it says a democratic republic, right? So if there has been an emphasis on both the words, then that means there must be some difference, right? And there is. Republic is actually a subset of democracy. Democracy can be in very different forms. It can be direct democracy, as we saw in ancient Greece and Rome, right? It can be an indirect democracy, right? So the major feature of a democracy is majority rule. Majority vote rules the nation state, whereas in a republic, it's true that the majority which votes for the representative gets elected, but uh, there is a very crucial difference, especially with regard to certain unalienable rights to individuals. So, in a way, these are what you would say minority rights, right? So, a republic has a written constitution of certain basic rights that protect the minority from being completely unrepresented or overridden by the majority. This is what Tocqueville called as the tyranny of the majority. So this is the crucial difference between a republic and a democracy. Right? Certain inalienable rights. So how did the tradition of republicanism begin? It began 2-3 thousand years before, around during the time of Aristotle. 2,000 years, yeah. So Aristotle thought that people are inherently social creatures. They want to engage with other human beings for productive enterprise, and therefore, the problem of human freedom cannot be separated from the type of communities and the type of government in which the people live in. Both these questions are important to be addressed together. Right? Now, this thought was transformed during the Enlightenment, right? Because the ties between the rulers and the ruled became came into question. Before the Enlightenment, as we saw, the people were treated as subjects and the rulers as the overlords. Right? But this relationship changed from subjects to citizens, where the rulers were in their place because they were placed there by the citizens. So there was a crucial shift in power during the Enlightenment and after that. Right? And another thinker would be very pertinent in this regard, who is Rousseau. Right? We will be seeing Rousseau again and again, as we proceed with social. So, in republicanism, what I want to bring in is that Rousseau was a Enlightenment thinker from France, and his ideas were very crucial to the French Revolution, and it influenced the French Revolution a lot. Right. So, one of the key ideas of Rousseau was the general will. So, we'll see what exactly is the general will. So, for Rousseau, for a republic to be successful, the capacity to act ethically, to act via virtue, is very important in the pursuit of the common good rather than private satisfaction. As we saw, the thinkers in Enlightenment were obsessed with this idea of common good which is shared by all and it helps everyone. So, this is what Rousseau termed as the general will. Through this political democratic space, the general will can come in, and for him it emerges almost magically, and it is the undivided will of the people. So the emphasis here is on undivided, right? So he's trying to say that everyone shares something which everyone shares a way of thinking, right? And it helps everyone. That is the main point. Now, this thought was taken to the extremes during the French Revolution, where the radicals like Robespierre executed everyone who did not think as they thought, right? Because according to Rousseau, it cannot be so. Because everyone has some common good, the general will, right? Those who do not uh, comply by it are, there is no such thing, because there is a magical thing called general which helps everyone, right? So the question does not arise, and that's why for Robespierre, since the question does not arise, he just made sure the people did not arise. So of course Rousseau made a lot of different contributions, which we'll see, right? So one more important thinker we'll bring here in the concept of republicanism and democracy is Tocqueville. Tocqueville is a 20th century American sociologist. We'll see some of his studies later. So, for Tocqueville, the rise of democratic social conditions is essential for more freedom. However, if people do not participate in the institutions, a type of democratic despotism can emerge. So, despotism means a despot who enforces his will even against opposition, right? And this kind of democratic despotism can involve silencing of minority viewpoints in the face of popular opinion. So this is what Tocqueville called as the tyranny of the majority, right? So even thinkers, during that time, they were very very critical of the tyranny of the majority, and they believed that some of the decisions taken by the majority cannot be good for the health of the democracy itself, right? Why? Because democratic despotism concentrates power in the state. It creates a depoliticized political culture. That means where there is no discourse, there is centralization, right? Instead of divesting powers to local communities, right? It weakens citizen cooperation in the process, and that is the most crucial point. Without citizen participation, democracy does not exist. So this pursuit of money and riches becomes much more prominent in such kind of a environment of despotism, right? It promotes culture of egoism and individualism rather than public participation. There is little concern for future or past generations. So as we see, for Tocqueville, social, cultural, and institutional requirements of a good democracy must promote citizen participation, right? A reflexive, that means a citizen who thinks, and an active citizen is important for a democracy to survive. Romanticism. So, Romanticism is a perspective, right? A thought which developed as a reaction to the Enlightenment. Enlightenment was too pure. It just wanted reason, right? It disregarded everything else, and basically disregarded reality, right? Everyone does not follow pure reason. People sometimes follow emotion, and sometimes people's reason itself is constrained by their experience or by their reality, right? So, this is what Romanticism brought in. It emphasized the centrality of feeling over reason, and in a way, this thought was derived from Rousseau. So, as we saw about Rousseau in our previous topic, how he contributed to republicanism. So, Rousseau was very much interested in individuality, right, and in European society at the time. So, he shared the opposition to monarchy, and he wanted the society to get rid of superstition. It therefore became a major critic of monarchy. So, for Rousseau, the problem with the Enlightenment philosophy is that it elevated egoism, right? You, me, and the pursuit of wealth as the biggest human goal. But actuality in actuality, these goals increase human corruption, according to Rousseau. So this notion of a simple and rational individual, which and the Enlightenment thinkers assumed, was wrong according to Rousseau. The depths of human desire and emotions are mysterious. People are not solely rational creatures, but complex emotional creatures, right? So we will see later on when we study Durkheim the concept of state of nature, how human civilization began from, and why did they come together to form society. Right? Different thinkers have given different perspectives, but for Rousseau, uh, man began in society as a noble savage. That means he was a dignified individual. He was naturally good, right? He was not a barbarian. But this state of nature disappeared when civilization came, and people became increasingly corrupt and depraved. This transformation was very necessary for civilization to happen, and once it has happened, humans could never go back to that nostalgic state of a noble savage. So the damage has been done when people come together to form civilization, right? But this is where the concept of republicanism of Rousseau comes into being. So for Rousseau, as we saw, the concept of general will, right? So for Rousseau, these individual wills and desires of all the people in society should come together and should form a sort of a general will, public good, for a virtuous society to emerge. So this concept of state of nature and evolution of civilization we'll see in much more detail when we do Durkheim, and also in a way when we do Parsons. So the point here to notice is that for romantics, humankind must be reconciled with nature, right? It's not pure science, and reason should be informed by emotions, right? Reason and emotions are not separate, they should be mixed. Hence, romantics desire authentic life, not an artificial life where feelings are separated from humans, right? So it's a kind of a realism, you could say. For romantics, people's duty is not to live up to the demands of reason, as it was for Kant, right? If we have a duty, it is to express our own unique inner voice. So this is a new kind of individualism which Rousseau and romantics are promoting, where each person should follow their own distinct life calling. Life calling means, something which we want to do, or we are born to do. So this is not in the traditional sense, the life calling, like you're born in a caste, then that means you should perform that occupation, right? Individuals can follow any models they want, but the point is that they should create the lifestyle for themselves. So the next person we are going to talk about is Hegel. So Hegel was a German philosopher, and the ideas of our classical social theorists were deeply influenced by Hegel. So, as we saw in the Enlightenment, right, that period brought reason to the central of human thinking and progress, and it was only through reason that we can rule, right? However, romantics who came after them, they were critical about this Enlightenment perspective of progress. The Romantics celebrated tradition and experience and individuality. Right? Individuals can be emotional, and reason itself is not same throughout. It depends on the culture and a lot of other things. So Hegel connected this romantic idea to rationality. How did he do that? So Hegel sees that the world will become more and more rational with time, right? Like the Enlightenment thinkers. But he differed with them over the process. That is how it will become more and more rational, right? For Enlightenment thinkers, it was very simple. History moves in a linear progression, right? Whereas for Hegel, this history, the movement was what he called as dialectical. That is, the world moves via opposites. There is an idea, uh, then there is a counter idea which opposes the idea, then they both mix together to form a compromise, which is the synthesis. So this is a cyclical process of development and progress. All right. In simple forms, you could say thesis, antithesis, and synthesis. And the synthesis itself becomes a new thesis, and so on. So, in the chapter of Marx, right, we'll see much more about Hegel and Kant, right, and some branches of philosophy such as idealism, realism, right, and what they all talk about. But here, in this chapter, what we want to emphasize is that the idea of the progress of human consciousness, right? It's not a simple linear thing, more and more rational, but it's a conflict, right? It's drama, it's emotion, right? Alienation and reconciliation. So the process of self-discovery, it's a very complex process, according to Hegel. and history is seen through the evolution of ideas. His view is more cultural and historical, right? Uh, yeah, so in a way, you could say Hegel's idea of progress is the power of negative thinking. For Hegel, we only understand things through the opposites, right? Through what they exclude. Therefore, to know freedom, we must know what it means, for lack of freedom. To know love, we must know the lack of love, right? Knowledge arises through this process of negation and contraction, right? So knowledge itself in a way is an unstable unity. It's always changing, it's not static, right? It evolves with time. So individual development also evolves with time, right? So reason develops, it's not a stationary thing, it develops as people attempt to comprehend, understand and change the world around them. So we'll see how Marx used this idea of dialectics to come up with his theory of historical materialism. Right? But to sum up Hegel, the point is that for Hegel, history is a process whose meaning is revealed by stages. Right? Each historical era represents humankind's growing awareness of its role, right? And if you see history, that is what has happened, right? With time, there has been a move towards more justice, right? More equality. Earlier there was segregation, right? Now there is equal equality, equal participation, right? But that too is a slow process. Now let's take the example of America, right? Slavery was abolished by Lincoln, right? Almost 100 years after, during 1916, Martin Luther King, civil segregation was removed, right? And now there is more protest for more equality, Black Lives Matter. So this kind of a thing. It's a process. And similarly, self-consciousness and awareness uh, itself evolves with this conflict and contradiction. So, if a lot of thinkers become confusing, don't worry. This is just an introduction, and with when we do our classical thinkers, we'll see most of these thinkers in much more detail and in a more contextual manner. So, to sum up the ideas we have seen till now, we saw the scientific revolution, how it brought about a new way of thinking, how it brought an era where tradition was challenged, and where God was not central to explaining the universe. Then we saw how the Enlightenment thought came from the scientific revolution, how people and thinkers obsessed over reason, right? And how reason was held as the only way in which humans can progress. Then we saw a reaction against enlightenment in Romanticism, right? We saw uh, Rousseau. We saw how the Romantics thought that the soul, so much importance to reason is wrong. Humans are not machines, right? Humans have emotion. Humans' rationality is bounded by their experience, right? Something which might be rational to one culture, it can be rational to another. And we saw Hegel, right, in which the way Hegel differed with Enlightenment thinkers about the process of change. Instead of it being linear, rationality itself is a process of discovery, right, through contradiction and conflict, right, synthesis and antithesis and the thesis, right. The uh, consciousness and rationality is itself a process of discovery, and it's not a linear progression. It's uh, uh, it's a process of discovery. And now we will see some events which were crucial at the time. Uh, it is the French Revolution and the Industrial Revolution, right? But in sociology, when we see events, we won't be seeing the chronology of events. That is not important to us, right? Who came when, what happened when. What concerns sociology is the effect these historical events had on the social structures and institutions, right? The relationship between the person and society, between a citizen and the nation, right? This kind of things. So, coming to the French Revolution, what were the effects of the French Revolution? It will be better if you see a summary of the French and Industrial Revolution from a lot of, any one of the YouTube channels such as Crash Course World History, right? Just to remind yourself what it was exactly, right? So, what did the French Revolution do, and why is it very important to sociology? Basically, the main reasons for the emergence of sociology was the French Revolution. We saw uh, that Auguste Comte was there during the French Revolution, and the constant change and devastation caused by the French Revolution led to Comte making a discipline which can explain such changes and control it, right, to prevent such disasters. So, what the French Revolution did was it gave an idea to the people that the old social order could be swept away in a revolutionary act. Right? There was no need for incremental and slow change. You could just, remove everything by one revolutionary act, and the whole society can be remade according to reason, how we want it. This French Revolution affected the entire social structure in France. Right? Before the revolution, France was divided into three different classes, right? They were called as estates. So in the French Revolution, basically the third estate revolted against the first and the second estate. So it created the idea that political rather than religious revolution was the fundamental vehicle for social change. Right? The whole French Revolution was a political revolution, and most importantly, these ideas were articulated by the philosophers of Enlightenment, like Adam Smith and Rousseau. They argued that society should be based on rationality and the natural rights of man. Right? How we saw that how this word was used in the Declaration of Independence of 1789. Right? The natural rights of man. Just because you are born as a human being gives you certain inalienable rights, right? Rather than tradition and privilege. So they believed that progress of humanity was tied to reason, and the French monarchy was stopping such progress, and hence it had to be removed. It made the rule of the people, right, for a small time, and it inspired the feeling of nationalism. It freed property from public control. It abolished all estates between the government and people, and it inspired a lot of other uprisings all over Europe in the 19th century. Right? So French Revolution had devastating and consequences. Some of the ideas still are central to human progress and the meaning of development. Right? The Industrial Revolution started around 1750 in England. It was basically, to sum up the Industrial Revolution, it was invention of new technology, right? Like new sources of energy, which was coal, new sources of mobility, the ways you can go faster, like the steam engine was invented. So it made possible trains and steam ships. Right? Mobility became faster, and new ways of communication, right? The printing press was invented at that time, so books can be printed, mass printed. So this was a time when mass literacy spread. All these things came together to create the Industrial Revolution, which still dictates our world today. right? Climate change and all. It's an aftermath of the Industrial Revolution. It changed. Human beings organized themselves. Cities came into being, right? People started living for work rather than living where they were born in, right? You move mobility, change the family structure from a joint family to a nuclear family, which was more mobile, which what the Industrial Revolution wanted, right? So this during that time the pace of change was very very fast, and we saw a lot of critics who and sociologists who emerged during this time, especially Marx and Engels. So Engels was a friend of Marx, and both of them together wrote the Communist Manifesto among other books. So one of the best quotes from that was that all that is solid melts into the air, all that is holy is profane. Right? What is holy profane we'll see when we do Durkheim, but the point is that the change was so fast then that no one could believe that anything can stay the same. Everything was changing. New social changes came because of the urbanization. Slums came, right? Angels saw those slums, and Marx, both of them were affected, and they saw the negative effects of capitalism, right, when it was emerging. The way the property relations were changing. They saw inequality increasing, right? They saw urbanization happening, new technology coming, the factory system being produced, right? Mass production of goods. New social classes emerged where money, instead of tied to land, right, being a landlord or a serf, it became tied to industry, right? uh, and science was again at the forefront of change. So this finishes our brief introduction to some of the ideas, right, and some of the events which led to the which influenced our classical thinkers greatly. Now, what influence each of these ideas had on the thinkers, I'll add this part of the video a bit later, after we have done thinkers, right? So we'll be revisiting this video after our whole journey into thinkers is over, so that you understand the context better. So let's just start into the next video, which is introduction to Durkheim. Thank you.